Is that all you've got, Mr. Vance? The sharp voice cut through Elijah's impassioned pitch, an echo in the opulent, minimalist VC conference room. His jaw tightened, the legendary name Ford Nexus whispering through his mind as Seraphina Reed's disdainful gaze settled upon him. What would drive a young black engineer to dedicate every waking hour to lines of code, fueled by cold coffee and an unyielding vision? For Elijah Vance, it was CipherCore, his ambitious cybersecurity startup, a dream born in the quiet hum of his cramped apartment office. Late into the night, he meticulously refined its algorithms, a digital fortress taking shape. Yet, a crucial piece was missing, an elusive ghost in the machine. Nexus, the legendary hacker whose genius he admired and desperately sought to recruit. Across the dimly lit online forums, Nexus was a myth whispered in hushed tones, a force of nature in the digital realm. Their impossible hacks, once thought unbreachable, had redefined cybersecurity. They'd infiltrated systems thought impenetrable, leaving behind only an enigmatic signature. Elijah scrolled through speculative posts, a mixture of awe and frustration in his chest. CipherCore needed that level of expertise, that unparalleled insight. But how do you recruit a ghost? A legend who operated solely in the shadows, whose true identity remained the tech world's most coveted secret. You can chase ghosts later, EJ. Right now, we need living, breathing capital. Marcus Thorne, Elijah's co-founder and closest friend, handed him a steaming mug in the bustling co-working space kitchen. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, was the anchor to Elijah's boundless ambition. Their upcoming pitch to Reed Ventures wasn't just another meeting. It was the crucible for CipherCore's future. Seraphina Reed isn't going to care about your hacker heroics. She cares about ROI. This is everything, man. The venture capital world was a gauntlet, a high-stakes arena where dreams were forged or shattered in minutes. Polished glass towers housed gatekeepers who held the keys to innovation, their decisions shaping the very landscape of technology. Young entrepreneurs, brimming with revolutionary ideas, often found themselves facing dismissive glances, their passion reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. For CipherCore, this was the ultimate test, a battle for survival in a world that often judged potential before true genius. What kind of fortress does a kingmaker build? In the cutthroat arena of Silicon Valley, where fortunes were minted and dreams shattered, Reed Ventures stood as an undisputed empire. Its skyscraper, a monolithic testament to glass and steel, pierced the San Francisco skyline like a polished spear. Each floor, a realm of exclusive power. Each window, a reflection of the city's relentless ambition. To step into its gleaming, high-ceilinged lobby was to enter a different echelon of existence, a place where innovation was currency and the gatekeepers held absolute sway. For countless startups, Reed Ventures wasn't just a funding source. It was the oracle, the final word, the difference between oblivion and legend. And at the heart of this formidable empire sat its most formidable queen, Seraphina Reed. At 42, Seraphina moved with the precise, almost surgical grace of someone who measured every word, every gesture. Her office was a study in minimalist perfection, clean lines, polished chrome, and multiple holographic screens displaying complex data streams rather than simple charts. She wasn't just another venture capitalist, she was an algorithm, dissecting pitch decks with lightning speed, her incisive notes appearing almost magically on her tablet. Her assistant, Aisha Khan, a quiet woman who seemed to anticipate Seraphina's needs before they were even voiced, observed her boss's quiet intensity. Seraphina Reed was known not just for her wealth, but for her ruthless intellect, her uncanny ability to spot a flaw or a diamond in a sea of hopefuls. She was the one who, with a single word, could launch a company into orbit or send it spiraling into obscurity. But beneath the veneer of the astute venture capitalist lay another, deeper obsession. As the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office, Seraphina often found herself poring over obscure cybersecurity journals, their pages filled with cryptic diagrams and theoretical exploits. Her gaze, usually sharp and critical, softened slightly, becoming intensely focused. On the wall behind her minimalist desk, an abstract digital art piece, reminiscent of a complex circuit board or a neural network, glowed with subtle, shifting colors. It was a subtle clue, perhaps, to those who truly understood. Seraphina possessed an unparalleled understanding of the digital underworld, an expertise that went far beyond mere investment strategy. She pursued groundbreaking security solutions with an almost zealous fervor, driven by a profound personal knowledge of the vulnerabilities that plagued the modern world. Meanwhile, hours before the crucial pitch, back in CipherCore's cramped co-working space, Elijah and Marcus were a whirlwind of nervous energy. Elijah, pacing between a whiteboard covered in flowcharts and his laptop, rehearsed his pitch for the 10th time. And our proprietary homomorphic encryption allows for secure data processing without decryption, maintaining zero-knowledge proofs throughout the entire lifecycle. Marcus, ever the pragmatic one, sat across from him, sipping lukewarm coffee, offering constructive criticism. Good, but slow down on the jargon, E. Remember, Seraphina Reed is unflappable. She'll demand technical depth, but she also expects clarity. Don't let her intimidate you into over-explaining. They ran through potential tough questions, particularly focusing on the intricate security architecture, knowing that Reed was notoriously demanding when it came to technical integrity. The clock ticked, each second amplifying the weight of their impending meeting. The elevator ride up to Reed Ventures' executive floor felt like an ascent into another dimension. The polished steel walls reflected Elijah and Marcus's anxious faces, distorting them slightly. The digital floor counter climbed with unnerving speed. 20, 30, 40. No music, just the faint hum of machinery and the frantic thump of two hearts. They exchanged a nervous glance, a silent acknowledgement of the immense pressure pressing down on them. This wasn't just another pitch. This was the culmination of years of tireless work, endless nights, and audacious dreams. This single meeting held the power to validate their vision or consign CipherCore to the vast graveyard of forgotten startups. The air grew thick with anticipation, each floor passed adding to the monumental weight of the moment. The polished mahogany table of the Reed Ventures conference room gleamed under the cool, sterile light, reflecting Elijah Vance's anxious silhouette. He and Marcus Thorne sat opposite three empty chairs, their meticulously prepared presentation slides glowing silently on the large display screen. The air was thick with anticipation, each tick of the minimalist wall clock amplifying the pressure. Then, the heavy oak door swung open with a soft, decisive click. Seraphina Reed entered, a figure of impeccable, almost intimidating composure. Her tailored charcoal suit seemed to absorb the light, her sharp features framed by sleek, dark hair. Behind her, Aisha Khan, her assistant, moved with quiet efficiency. Seraphina's gaze swept over Elijah and Marcus, a polite but utterly impenetrable assessment. "Mr. Vance, Mr. Thorne," she offered, her voice cool and perfectly modulated. "Thank you for coming. Please, make yourselves comfortable. We can begin when you're ready." Her words were a formal welcome, yet they carried the weight of an unspoken challenge, immediately putting Elijah on edge. Elijah took a steadying breath, the scent of expensive coffee and ambition filling his lungs. This was it. He clicked the remote, advancing his first slide. "Good morning, Ms. Reed. We are CipherCore, and we believe we've developed a revolutionary approach to cybersecurity, one that doesn't just react to threats, but anticipates them." He launched into his pitch, his voice gaining confidence as he spoke of their unique, adaptive algorithms, a system designed to evolve faster than any attack. He spoke of the societal impact, of protecting vulnerable data, of a future where digital safety wasn't a luxury but a fundamental right. Marcus nodded, a silent pillar of support. Seraphina listened, her expression unreadable, her gaze fixed on the screen, then occasionally on Elijah, a pen hovering over a sleek notepad. Her silence was not encouraging. It was a void, waiting to be filled, or perhaps to swallow him whole. Elijah was deep into explaining the nuanced architecture of CipherCore's encryption protocols, detailing the elliptic curve cryptography implementation, when Seraphina's voice cut through his flow, sharp and precise. "Are you sure you understand the underlying cryptographic principles here, Mr. Vance?" Her tone was not curious but dismissive, a subtle smirk playing on her lips as she leaned back in her chair. "Or is this merely a high-level overview you've memorized from a white paper? Because the way you're presenting it, it sounds rather elementary." Elijah felt a familiar sting, his jaw tightening. He started to explain, "Ms. Reed, the elegance lies in the optimization of—" But she cut him off, her hand waving dismissively. "I'm not interested in platitudes. I'm asking about the fundamental mathematical proof. Can you walk me through the finite field arithmetic without referring to your slides?" The challenge was not just technical. It was a deliberate belittling of his expertise, an implication that he was merely a frontman, not the brilliant mind behind the innovation. Marcus, sensing the shift from inquiry to outright condescension, leaned forward. "Ms. Reed, if I may, Elijah's implementation actually leverages a novel approach to key exchange, mitigating some of the traditional vulnerabilities in." But before Marcus could finish, Seraphina's gaze snapped to him, cold as steel. "I'm speaking to the founder, Mr. Thorne, not the hype man." Her words hung in the air, a blunt dismissal that extended not just to Marcus's input, but to his very presence as a valuable contributor. Marcus visibly flinched, retreating slightly, his support now relegated to a silent, frustrated clench of his jaw. Seraphina's gaze swept over both of them, a chilling judgment that painted them as two young men out of their depth, their ideas insignificant against her towering intellect. Elijah felt the familiar, hot flush of indignation rising within him. He'd faced this before. The subtle biases, the unspoken assumptions that his youth, his background, somehow negated his brilliance. He took a deep, calming breath, pushing back against the urge to snap. This wasn't just about the pitch anymore. It was about respect. "Ms. Reed," he said, his voice quiet but firm, a ripple of steel beneath the surface. "My team, which includes Marcus, built CipherCore from the ground up. Every line of code, every cryptographic principle you're questioning, has been rigorously tested and refined by us." In his mind, he heard the echoes of past dismissals, the whispers that doubted his capacity. But this time, he wouldn't let those assumptions define him. He met Seraphina's unwavering, skeptical stare with a resolve that spoke volumes, a silent battle of wills playing out across the polished table. The opulent conference room, once a stage for Elijah's ambition, had become a crucible under Seraphina Reed's unblinking gaze. She leaned forward slightly, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping a rhythm on the polished table, a sound that grated on Elijah's nerves more than a siren's wail. "Mr. Vance," she began, her voice a silken blade, "your CipherCore boasts unbreakable encryption protocols, yet you propose a multi-layered quantum-resistant algorithm. Why such complexity? Surely a simpler AES 256 implementation, perhaps with a robust key management system, would suffice for most enterprise needs?" She paused, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips, as if offering a child a crayon instead of a paintbrush. Elijah felt a familiar heat rise in his chest. This wasn't a genuine question. It was a deliberate oversimplification designed to corner him, to imply he was over-engineering, or, worse, didn't grasp fundamental principles. He met her gaze, forcing his voice to remain calm, professional. "Ms. Reed, the threat landscape is evolving rapidly. AES 256 is robust, yes, but for the forward-thinking, high-value data protection we envision, merely sufficient isn't enough. Our quantum-resistant layers are a proactive defense against emerging computational capabilities. It's not about current threats but future-proofing." He gestured earnestly at a slide displaying complex cryptographic diagrams, his passion for the technical details momentarily overshadowing his frustration. Seraphina merely tilted her head, tapping her pen faster. Seraphina's eyes, cold and assessing, swept over Elijah's earnest face, then over the intricate diagrams on the screen. She wasn't looking for understanding. She was looking for a crack. "Future-proofing," she echoed, the word dripping with thinly veiled sarcasm. She then delivered the blow with a dismissive wave of her hand, as if swatting away an annoying fly. "Frankly, Mr. Vance, this sounds less like a scalable enterprise solution and more like a clever hobby project. An academic exercise, perhaps, but hardly the basis for a multi-million-dollar valuation." The words hung in the air, a potent poison, a hobby project. The very phrase was designed to strip him of his professional legitimacy, to invalidate years of tireless work, sleepless nights, and intellectual struggle. Elijah's jaw tightened, his face hardening imperceptibly. He felt the familiar, bitter taste of being underestimated, not just for his youth or his skin color, but for his very intellect. He clenched his fists under the table, battling the primal urge to lash out, to defend his life's work against such a casually cruel dismissal. He was not a hobbyist. CipherCore was not a pastime. It was his future, and the future of cybersecurity, he believed, But how do you reason with someone who has already made up their mind to see you as less? Marcus, seated beside Elijah, shifted uncomfortably. He knew the depth of Elijah's commitment, the sheer brilliance behind CipherCore. He shot Elijah a quick glance, a silent plea in his eyes. Stay calm, don't let her get to you. The air in the room grew thick with unspoken tension, heavy and suffocating. Even Aisha, Seraphina's assistant, usually a statue of polite efficiency, subtly adjusted her posture in her seat. Her eyes flickered between Seraphina's impassive face and Elijah's tightly controlled anger, a silent acknowledgement of the palpable discomfort that had settled over the meeting. Seraphina, however, seemed oblivious or perhaps indifferent to the emotional climate she had created. For her, it was merely part of the process, a necessary pressure to reveal a diamond or expose a lump of coal. The silence stretched, a testament to the power she wielded and the growing frustration building within Elijah. Seraphina leaned forward then, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl that commanded attention. Let me be clear, Mr. Vance. In this industry, experience dictates authority. Proven track records, established credibility, a history of successful deployments. These are the metrics by which we assess potential. And, frankly, she paused, letting the implication hang. Your experience, while perhaps enthusiastic, doesn't quite measure up to the gravitas required for the kind of investment you're seeking. It was a direct, unvarnished statement of her prejudiced worldview, a declaration that his perceived status, not his actual ideas, would be his undoing. Elijah took a deep, steadying breath, his body language shifting. The defensive posture he had unconsciously adopted slowly melted away, replaced by something sharper, more resolute. He had endured enough. He had come here to present a vision, not to be lectured on his perceived place in the hierarchy. He straightened his shoulders, his gaze unwavering as he met Seraphina's cold stare. He was ready to make his final stand, to push back against the dismissive tide. The quiet, confident engineer was preparing for battle. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was pregnant with a new kind of defiance from Elijah. He looked at Seraphina, his mind racing, searching for an argument, a truth that could pierce her armor of condescension. He thought of the legends, the undisputed masters of the digital realm, the ones whose brilliance even Seraphina couldn't dismiss. And one name, the most elusive and revered, surfaced. Ms. Reed, Elijah began, his voice surprisingly steady. The elegance and foresight in CipherCore's architecture are undeniable. The principles we've applied are fundamental, robust, and truly innovative. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes burning with a desperate, defiant conviction. Even someone like Nexus, he stated, letting the legendary name hang in the air, a rhetorical challenge. If they were here, if they truly understood the technical depth, they would recognize the elegance of this solution. They would see the genius. For a fleeting, almost imperceptible moment, a flicker of something unreadable crossed Seraphina's face. Her eyes, usually so composed, seemed to hold a fleeting confusion, a spark of surprise quickly extinguished. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but Elijah, acutely attuned to her every reaction, caught it. He had hit a nerve, though he couldn't possibly know why. The tension in the room, already at a breaking point, coiled even tighter. You speak of Nexus, Mr. Vance. Seraphina Reed's voice cut through the conference room's tense silence, but it was no longer the dismissive, cutting tone Elijah had grown accustomed to. This was different. Her words now carried a low, resonant hum, an unsettling gravitas that pulled him in. Her eyes, which moments ago had held a dismissive glint, now seemed to pierce him, cold and sharp, like a scanner analyzing every line of his code. What makes you think you know what Nexus would recognize? Elijah felt a sudden chill, a prickle of unease that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The shift was palpable, a sudden, unexpected change in the very atmosphere of the room. It was as if the air had thickened, charged with an unspoken energy. He had braced himself for another condescending critique, another belittling remark. Instead, he was met with a challenge, a question that felt less like an insult, and more like a direct, personal interrogation from someone who suddenly held all the cards. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was no longer just a pitch. This was something else entirely. Seraphina didn't wait for an answer. Her gaze never wavered from Elijah's as she slowly, deliberately, reached a hand into the inner pocket of her impeccably tailored blazer. Every eye in the room followed the movement, a collective breath held in anticipation. Marcus leaned forward, his brow furrowed in confusion, sensing the dramatic shift but unable to pinpoint its cause. Aisha, ever the silent observer, watched with a faint, knowing curve to her lips. With a flourish that was almost theatrical, Seraphina pulled out a sleek, minimalist card. It wasn't the standard corporate access badge, nor a generic business card. This was something else entirely. It was forged from a dark, almost obsidian-like material, its edges glowing with a subtle internal blue light that pulsed rhythmically, like a digital heartbeat. On its surface, intricate luminescent lines formed a complex circuit board pattern, and in the center, a single, stylized symbol, a shimmering, interconnected web. Elijah's eyes widened, a dawning, impossible realization beginning to take root in his mind. Marcus, beside him, let out a small, choked gasp, his jaw dropping as he recognized the unique, unmistakable insignia. Seraphina held the glowing card aloft, allowing its subtle light to cast an ethereal glow on her composed face. Her voice, now completely devoid of the sharp, condescending edge it had possessed moments before, was calm, clear, and resonated with an undeniable authority that commanded absolute attention. "Mr. Vance," she stated, her words dropping into the stunned silence like perfectly spaced code, "I am Nexus." The declaration hung in the air, a physical presence that stifled all sound. The room, which had been buzzing with latent tension, fell into an absolute, disorienting quiet. Elijah stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the dismissive venture capitalist with the legendary anonymous hacker he had idolized for years. Disbelief warred with a sudden, overwhelming sense of vindication and awe. Marcus, next to him, looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, his mouth agape, eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning exhilaration. Aisha, Seraphina's assistant, offered a small, knowing smile, a subtle confirmation that had been hidden in plain sight all along. The identity of the most elusive, brilliant mind in cybersecurity had just been unveiled, and the world of two ambitious entrepreneurs had just been irrevocably altered. Seraphina lowered the keycard, but its symbolic weight remained. Her gaze swept over Elijah, then Marcus, then back to Elijah, a silent assessment that was now utterly devoid of judgment, replaced by a keen intellectual curiosity. "I wear many masks, Mr. Vance," she explained, her voice gaining a deliberate, almost pedagogical tone. "Nexus is one, venture capitalist is another. Both, in their own way, are tests." She continued, her words weaving a complex tapestry of motive and method. "The tech world is rife with brilliant ideas, but true innovation often wilts under pressure, or is led by individuals who lack the resilience to defend their vision, or the depth to understand its true implications. My method as Nexus is to expose vulnerabilities. As a venture capitalist, it is to expose potential. I actively seek out and test innovative minds. I present a facade of dismissiveness, of superficial judgment, to see if the intellect I seek is strong enough, confident enough, to push back against perceived authority, to defend its worth, its code, its very existence, when everything is on the line." It was a ruthless, yet undeniably logical philosophy. Elijah's initial surge of anger, the burning injustice he'd felt throughout the pitch, slowly began to recede, replaced by a dawning respect that bordered on intellectual awe. He looked at Seraphina with new eyes, seeing not the arrogant VC, but the legendary mind behind the digital ghost. The pieces began to click into place with the precision of a perfectly executed algorithm. Her earlier ignorance regarding CipherCore's protocols, her seemingly belittling questions, they weren't genuine dismissals. They were surgical strikes, probing questions designed to test the very core of his understanding, to see if his convictions were as robust as his code. He recalled the obscure, almost impossible hacks attributed to Nexus, the ones that had often targeted systems with glaring fundamental flaws that no one else seemed to notice. Seraphina hadn't been trying to make him look foolish. She had been reverse engineering his thought process, stress testing his foundation, The realization was profound, validating his intelligence while simultaneously humbling him. He wasn't just being judged, he was being assessed by the best. And he had, somehow, passed. The opulent conference room, which moments ago had been an arena of intellectual combat, now felt charged with a different kind of electricity. Seraphina Reed, no longer the dismissive venture capitalist, but the legendary Nexus, sat poised, her gaze unwavering. "Your hobby project has potential, Mr. Vance," she stated, her voice clear and resonant, devoid of any prior condescension. "Significant potential, in fact. I'm prepared to invest. A seed round of $10 million to be precise. But it comes with a condition." Elijah, still reeling, could only stare. $10 million. This was everything he and Marcus had dreamed of. And more. Seraphina leaned forward, a sleek, minimalist digital contract appearing on the conference table's embedded screen. "But only if you're willing to work with Nexus. Directly." The challenge was clear, stark, and utterly exhilarating. It wasn't just an investment. It was an invitation into the inner sanctum of the very legend he had chased for years. Elijah's hand hovered over the holographic document, a hesitant reach towards a future that had just dramatically reshaped itself. Marcus, who had been frozen in disbelief, finally found his voice, a strangled gasp escaping his lips. "She's Nexus? The Nexus?" He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock, awe, and a burgeoning manic joy. "The ghost? The one you've been chasing for years? The one who broke the unbreakables?" He looked at Elijah, desperate for confirmation that this wasn't some elaborate, cruel prank. Elijah, still processing the monumental shift in their reality, could only nod slowly, his own mind struggling to reconcile the dismissive VC with the legendary hacker. It was too much, too incredible to fully grasp. The room, once thick with tension, now hummed with a bewildered excitement. For Marcus, the pragmatic co-founder, this wasn't just funding. It was an affirmation of Elijah's wildest dreams, a vindication of his relentless pursuit of the impossible. As Marcus continued to stammer in joyful disbelief, Aisha Khan, Seraphina's assistant, caught Elijah's eye. Her composure remained unruffled, a stark contrast to the stunned men before her. She offered a small, knowing smile, a subtle curve of the lips that confirmed everything. Aisha had been in on it all along, the silent accomplice to Seraphina's elaborate test. She was the quiet gatekeeper, privy to the dual identity of her formidable boss, the one who orchestrated Seraphina's seamless transitions between the cutthroat world of venture capital and the shadowy realm of elite cybersecurity. Her presence underscored Seraphina's meticulous planning and the depth of the layers she maintained. It added another layer to the enigma, suggesting that true power often moves with quiet efficiency, its full scope understood by only a trusted few. Elijah's mind raced, piecing together Seraphina's ignorant questions, her precise criticisms, her uncanny understanding of CipherCore's vulnerabilities and strengths. It wasn't dismissiveness. It was the ultimate penetration test, a test he had, against all odds, passed. He met Seraphina's gaze, a newfound respect replacing his earlier frustration and anger. "Ms. Reed," he began, his voice steady, infused with a quiet power that hadn't been there moments ago. "It would be an honor to work with Nexus." He extended his hand across the table, not in supplication, but in a gesture of partnership and mutual respect. Seraphina, for the first time that day, allowed a rare, genuine smile to grace her lips. It was fleeting, but authentic. She met his hand with a firm, confident grip, a silent agreement forged between two brilliant minds, one revealed, one affirmed. The formal meeting concluded, but as Elijah and Seraphina stood, a moment of quiet understanding passed between them. The echoes of her previous condescension still hung in the air, but now they served as a powerful lesson, not a wound. "Never let anyone's assumptions define your capabilities, Mr. Vance," Seraphina said, her voice now a calm, mentoring tone, "especially when those assumptions are born of ignorance or prejudice." Elijah nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the profound lesson she had, in her own rigorous way, imparted. He had faced dismissal, endured belittlement, and emerged not just with funding, but with the validation of a legend. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a testament to resilience, a blueprint for intellectual justice. It was a powerful reminder that the true measure of worth lies not in titles or appearances, but in the unwavering strength of one's intellect and character. The air in Seraphina Reed's private lab, nestled deep within the Reed Ventures skyscraper, hummed with a different kind of energy than the polished conference room above. Here, the sterile luxury gave way to functional, high-tech intimacy. Monitors glowed with intricate lines of code, servers whirred softly, and the scent of ozone lingered. Seraphina, shed of her sharp VC suit, now wore a simple black hoodie and cargo pants, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She moved with a fluid grace, her fingers dancing across a custom-built keyboard, manipulating a holographic interface that projected complex network topologies into the air. Elijah Vance watched, mesmerized. This was Nexus, the legend he'd chased for years, now sitting beside him, effortlessly dissecting a simulated cyber attack. He saw not the dismissive VC, but a maestro at work, her intellect, a force of nature. The key isn't just to block, Seraphina explained without looking up. It's to understand the attacker's intent, to predict their next move before they even conceive it. Most systems are reactive. CipherCore, with the right integration, can be proactive. Elijah leaned in, a torrent of questions forming. So, you're suggesting a predictive anomaly detection on the behavioral layer, rather than just signature-based or heuristic? He asked, his voice a mix of awe and intellectual hunger. Seraphina offered a rare, small smile, her eyes still fixed on the swirling data. Precisely, Mr. Vance, you're finally seeing the game. Later that week, the contrast was stark. On the executive floor of Reed Ventures, Seraphina Reed was once again the unyielding venture capitalist. Her tailored suit was impeccable, her demeanor cool and analytical as she flawlessly conducted a high-stakes call with a major tech CEO. Her voice, crisp and authoritative, cut through the speakerphone, negotiating terms with surgical precision. The conversation was all market share, valuation, and strategic acquisitions. But the moment the call ended, a subtle transformation began. Aisha Khan, Seraphina's ever-efficient assistant, was already there, holding a different pair of glasses, sleeker, with blue light-filtering lenses, and a soft, dark hoodie. Seraphina smoothly swapped her executive spectacles for the hacker's eyewear, shrugging into the hoodie as if shedding a skin. The shift was effortless, a practiced ritual. It was a testament to her discipline, a carefully constructed duality that Aisha, her silent confidant, managed with quiet precision. This was Seraphina's world, a meticulously balanced act between the public face of power and the hidden realm of unparalleled digital mastery. She navigated both with an efficiency that bordered on art. Back at CipherCore's now expanded office space, the atmosphere buzzed with a newfound energy. Elijah Vance, once burdened by the weight of proving himself, moved with a visible lightness, an assured confidence that resonated through the team. He stood at the head of a large conference table, leading a brainstorming session, his ideas flowing freely and his explanations clear and concise. He integrated Seraphina's strategic insights on market penetration and advanced threat modeling seamlessly into their development plans. Nexus helped me see the forest and Duarteri the trees, he'd told Marcus. The macro vision and the micro vulnerabilities. Marcus Thorne watched from the corner, a proud smile playing on his lips. He remembered the anxious, often self-doubting Elijah, hunched over code in their cramped apartment. Now Elijah commanded the room, his passion infectious, his intellect undeniable. This wasn't just about the funding. It was about the validation, the mentorship that had unlocked something profound within Elijah. He had not only secured the future of CipherCore, but had also stepped into the leadership role he was always meant to inhabit. The news, as it always does in the tightly networked tech world, spread like wildfire. Whispers about Nexus and Reed Ventures, once confined to obscure forums, now circulated openly at industry events and spilled onto mainstream tech news sites. Online articles, initially speculative, soon confirmed the unconventional partnership between the legendary anonymous hacker and the promising young founder of CipherCore. Reed Ventures invests in CipherCore, Nexus revealed, one headline blared, another mused, Seraphina Reed, VC or vigilante hacker. The ripple effect was palpable. Elijah, once dismissed by a powerful VC, was now lauded as the visionary who had not only attracted the elusive Nexus, but had also survived her notoriously rigorous test. The industry, initially skeptical, now looked at CipherCore with a mixture of awe and intense curiosity. This wasn't just a funding round. It was a cultural moment, a public reckoning with the subtle biases that often overlooked genius. The story became a cautionary tale for those who judged by appearances, and an inspiring beacon for those who dared to dream beyond established hierarchies. Late one evening, Seraphina sat alone in her private office, the city lights twinkling like a vast, complex circuit board below her. She held a worn, slightly faded photograph. A younger version of herself, idealistic, earnest, perhaps a touch naive, staring confidently into the lens. She traced the outline of her youthful face with a slender finger. Her methods, she knew, were often perceived as ruthless, even cruel. But how else could one truly gauge resilience, true intellectual depth, when so many presented polished facades? She considered Elijah. He had been challenged, belittled, pushed to his breaking point. Yet he had held his ground, his intellect shining through the veil of prejudice. That was the talent she sought, the unyielding spark of genius that refused to be extinguished. The test had been harsh, yes, but the outcome was undeniable. Elijah Vance was exactly what CipherCore and indeed the cybersecurity world needed. A quiet sense of satisfaction settled over her, a rare emotion she allowed herself only when the gambit paid off and true potential was finally brought into the light. The air in CipherCore's main lab crackled with a different kind of energy now. Not the frantic energy of desperation, but the focused hum of collective genius. Elijah, his sleeves rolled up, pointed at a projection of a swirling data visualization. If we reroute the quantum entanglement key through a polymorphic hash, the brute force attack becomes computationally infeasible, even for an advanced persistent threat. Seraphina, standing beside him, her expression a rare blend of intense concentration and satisfaction, nodded. Precisely. But the latency on the handshake protocol is still too high. We need a zero-knowledge proof that can validate without revealing the key state. Marcus, observing from a nearby workstation, watched in awe as lines of code flashed across their screens, a rapid-fire intellectual dance. Then, a sudden resonant tapping mens echoed through the lab. On the main monitor, a complex algorithm, one they'd wrestled with for weeks, clicked into a perfectly optimized state. The network diagram, once riddled with potential vulnerabilities, now glowed with an impenetrable, self-healing architecture. A collective cheer erupted. Marcus let out a whoop, pumping his fist. Elijah and Seraphina exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of a major milestone achieved. Months later, under the blazing spotlights of a grand tech conference stage, Elijah Vance stood tall. No longer the earnest, slightly nervous entrepreneur, he commanded the room with a confident, articulate presence. Beside him, Seraphina Reed, impeccably dressed, exuded a calm, powerful aura that captivated the thousands in attendance. Ladies and gentlemen, Elijah's voice resonated. We present CipherCore 2.0, a revolutionary leap in cybersecurity, designed not just to defend, but to anticipate, and adapt. As he showcased the product's intuitive interface and its groundbreaking predictive algorithms, the audience was visibly captivated. Seraphina stepped forward, her voice a precise, strategic counterpoint. This isn't just about protecting data, it's about safeguarding the future of digital innovation. It's about building systems resilient enough to withstand the most sophisticated attacks, and smart enough to learn from them. Flashing cameras captured their triumph. The whispers weren't about a dismissive VC anymore, but about a dynamic duo who had redefined an industry. The digital world erupted. News articles, tech blogs, and social media feeds buzzed with unprecedented praise for CipherCore. CipherCore 2.0, the blueprint for a secure digital future, declared one prominent tech journal. Another hailed Elijah Vance as the visionary architect, and Seraphina Reed as the silent strategist, a nod to her dual identity as Nexus, now an open secret in the highest echelons of cybersecurity. The industry, once quick to judge and dismiss, now lauded them as pioneers. Elijah, the young black engineer who had been underestimated, was now a celebrated figure, his insights sought after, his name synonymous with innovation. The narrative had shifted from one of doubt to one of undeniable triumph, a testament to intellect and resilience. Backstage, amidst the fading applause and the last-minute interviews, Elijah found Seraphina in a quiet corner. The relentless energy of the conference seemed to dissipate around them. "Seraphina," he began, a genuine warmth in his voice. "Thank you. Not just for the investment, not just for Nexus, but for the test. It pushed me further than I thought possible." Seraphina turned, a rare, genuine smile gracing her lips. It was a smile that reached her eyes, softening their usual intensity. "Mr. Vance," she replied, her voice losing its edge, "your resilience, your intellect, and your unwavering belief in your vision were evident from the start. Some tests are necessary to reveal the true strength of a foundation. You built a formidable one." They stood for a moment, two minds that had clashed and then converged, united by a shared respect forged in the crucible of challenge. Later, at the bustling conference after-party, Marcus Thorne found Elijah, pulling him into a joyous, bone-crushing hug. "You showed them all, brother," Marcus exclaimed, his eyes shining with pride. "Every single one of those suits who thought they knew better. Remember that first pitch? Just us, a dream, and a whole lot of coffee. Look at us now." He gestured around the opulent room, filled with industry titans and flashing lights. Elijah laughed, a sound of pure contentment. "We did it, Marcus. We really did it." They clinked celebratory glasses, reflecting on the long journey from a cramped apartment office to this moment of undeniable triumph. It was a victory not just for CipherCore, but for every idea that had been dismissed, every talent that had been overlooked, and every voice that had fought to be heard. Years later, the hum of innovation still coursed through Elijah Vance's veins, but now it was tempered with wisdom. He stood on a brightly lit stage in a university lecture hall, a confident, polished figure addressing a new generation of aspiring tech leaders. The eager faces in the audience, some bright with ambition, others still finding their footing, reminded him of his younger self. "I remember the day I pitched CipherCore to a venture capitalist," Elijah began, his voice calm, resonant. "I walked in with an innovative solution, a passionate team, and a belief in my own intellect. But what I was met with was not an assessment of my code, but a judgment of my perceived place. It's easy to assume you know someone's capabilities based on how they look, or what title they carry, or even the color of their skin. But those assumptions are a dangerous algorithm, capable of crashing the most brilliant ideas before they even get a chance to run." He paused, a subtle, knowing smile playing on his lips, a silent acknowledgement of the young man he once was, underestimated and dismissed. And what of Seraphina Reed, the enigma known as Nexus? Her legacy continued to ripple through the vast, interconnected digital world, a force both seen and unseen. The name Nexus still whispered through encrypted channels and dark web forums, but now it often carried a different connotation, not just of unparalleled hacking prowess, but of a mysterious guardian, a silent architect of digital integrity. Seraphina remained an elusive figure, her public persona as the sharp-tongued VC a carefully maintained mask, while her true self, the mind behind Nexus, continued to operate from the shadows, subtly influencing the tech landscape. True power, it turned out, wasn't always about the loudest voice or the highest title. It was about the intellect that shaped the very fabric of the digital world, often from unexpected corners. In a world too quick to categorize, to label, and to dismiss, Elijah's journey and Seraphina's reveal serve as a powerful blueprint. They remind us that expertise and worth aren't dictated by appearance, by the clothes we wear, or by the initial impression we make. They are forged in intellect, in resilience, and in the quiet confidence to stand by your truth. Every person you encounter carries a universe of experience and potential within them, a unique cipher waiting to be understood. Are you truly listening, or are you letting your assumptions write the narrative for you? Respect isn't just a courtesy, it's a fundamental recognition of shared humanity. So, the next time someone tries to put you in a box, to question your knowledge based on anything other than your actual merit, remember Elijah Vance. Remember the audacious intellect that refused to be silenced, even by the legendary Nexus. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your ideas. And never, ever let anyone's prejudices prevent you from showcasing the brilliance you possess. Because you never know who you're truly talking to, And more importantly, everyone deserves to be heard, regardless of who they are or who others assume them to be. If you enjoyed this story of intellectual justice served and assumptions shattered, make sure to subscribe for more incredible true stories. And let us know in the comments, have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or what profession people assumed you were in? Share your story below.